Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Goof, and I'm here with the second part of the solution to the third Scratch challenge, which is called Maze Race. If you are working on this Scratch challenge, I hope you'll find this video useful. If you haven't seen the original Scratch challenge number 3, I will put a link to that in the description below. And if you haven't seen solution part 1, you might want to watch that in the description below. Anyhow, in this video, we'll be talking about how do you add a splash screen to start your game and a splash screen to end your game, and how do you keep track of the time it takes you to get through the maze. Anyhow, the video starts right here. As you can see, I have updated the background a little bit on the screen here. I spent some time making the maze a little bit more complicated. It's still not super flashy, but it's a little bit more complicated of a maze, and I didn't want to take up a lot of video time demonstrating how to build that. The other two things I did is I created 2 new backdrops. And if you don't know what backdrops are, they are the background of your stage. So what you see in the background. I clicked on stage, clicked on the backdrops tab up on the top, and I created 2 new ones. One is a welcome screen that says welcome to Maze Race. It tells you how to play it, and it says press spacebar to begin. I also made a ending screen, and it just says congrats, you finished. I named all these screens. This first one I named Maze. This one I named Begin Screen. This one I named End Screen. That will be a little bit useful to remember what they're called when we want to display different screens. I also redid our sprite. Instead of using the cat, I went with I made my own little green rectangle just to keep it simple. The code for this has not changed much since the last video. It loops through here and it allows you to navigate through the maze. But we want to do more than just that now. We want to start our game by showing the begin screen. And how we do that is fairly simple. We're going to drag the flag. When flag is clicked, what we're going to put in there is we're going to hide our sprite because we don't really need the sprite right away. And then we're going to switch to the begin screen background. This is why it was important to name those maze, begin screen, and end screen. Because now when we start the game, we're going to want to show that begin screen. And the begin screen says, wait until you press the space bar. Or it says, press the space bar to begin. So that means we're going to need an event for that. And nicely, there is a when space key is pressed, do this section of code here. But the first thing we need to do in here, we actually then need to switch the backdrop back to the maze, and then we actually need to show our sprite. So there's a couple things we need to do in here. We're going to switch the backdrop to maze. We're going to send our sprite to the starting location, and then we are going to show it. And now I'll quickly run through this game and how you play it. I press the space bar. There's my maze. My little character does not move very fast, but you'll notice it goes through the maze, and I'm not going to go all the way through the maze this time, but I just demonstrated that's how you get your splash screen to show up. The next thing we need to do is we need to know when our program is done, and that is when do we actually get to this purple color right here. In order to check for that, we just add an if statement at the very end of our forever loop. Every time we go through this loop, we move, or we either move backward or we move in some direction. After we've done that moving, we're going to put an if statement that says if we're touching the color purple, click on this little color in the box, go click on the purple completion zone. That's where you're trying to get. And what do we need to do there? All we need to do is hide our sprite because we're done. And then we need to switch the backdrop to the end screen. Let's do that. Now let's run our game again. Press the space bar. And we will go through this race. Maybe I can speed this up. My character goes kind of slow. There we go, just working our way through the maze. It works a little bit slower when I'm recording, but you see I finished and it says congrats, you finished. Okay, so now we have a splash screen at the beginning and the end. The last thing we need to do here is we need to display a message that says how long all this took to do. So how many seconds? There's a couple of nice tools within Sensing and Operations that allows for this. Sensing has a timer. So right after we show something, right after we show our sprite, we're going to reset the timer. Right there we have a reset timer. And then at the bottom, right before we hide our sprite, we are going to go into looks and we're going to say something. And we're going to add one other nice little feature in here. We're going to use this join. And what the join does is it allows us to match two strings of text together. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make a long sentence that says, wow, you finished in a time of, put a couple spaces after that, and instead of leaving world in there, we're going to actually go back to Sensing and we're going to drag in timer. And what that means is it's now going to say, wow, you finished in a time of 25 seconds. Or whatever your time you finished is. We're going to display this message maybe for 7 seconds. That sounds pretty good. That should be all that's required to display a message on this. I'm going to run through playing the game here. Bear with me as it goes a little bit slower than I would have liked. But that's really about all the modifications you need to make to go from the initial part of the game and navigating through the maze to knowing that you've completed and finished the maze. As I slowly move across the top up here, trying to get to the end of the maze. I was never really much of a video game player, so as you can see, I'm not real great at this, but I'm getting through there. On the home stretch here, down we go. Wow, you finished in a time of 48.197. That was fantastic, and it tells me congrats, you finished. That is what it takes to get you finished with sort of the second portion of Maze Race. I hope you're doing well with Maze Race so far, and I hope you're accomplishing it and slowly working your way through it. Anyhow, our last video on part 3 will cover how do you put those times in a list and display that list and allow your game to have multiple runs per game, I guess you would say. So it doesn't totally stop the game. You can run through a couple of different times. But thanks for watching and good luck with Maze Race.